We're so excited, everybody, because Spark is back for a limited run engagement in November.
Yeah, we are so excited. We had a great run in July. We heard from a lot of people that they want more. So we are happy to let you know that we've added 3 shows, November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The performances will take place in Norwalk, Connecticut at an amazing venue. It's the personal studio and performance venue of an incredible artist named Five Fingers. And the venue is called the Art Monster Studio. We will put the ticket link in our bio as well as on our website, woowoointherealworld.com. You won't want to miss this production, and we hope to see you there. My joy is her joy, is his joy, and our joy to share. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to season 4 of Woo Woo in the Real World. Hi, Becky.
Hey, Tami. Good morning, Serena.
Good morning. Hi,
Yeah,
ladies.
so our guest today is Serena Norr. We're
Mhm.
so excited to dive into this juicy conversation where we're talking to the ladies of Spark, the Experience, which is a theatrical production. It's a live show where women bare their souls as a way of really showing the interconnectedness of us all and the resiliency of the human spirit. And by telling our stories, it really helps everyone to heal and grow and to know that we're not alone in this world. So welcome to the show,
Mhm.
Serena.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You, my
Yeah.
friend, have been at the very beginning of this journey of
Yeah.
storytelling, having many conversations that go years back, actually.
Yeah.
And I think we always had this haunting suspicion that we were going to work together, but we didn't really know how, right? So Serena is a playwright. You're also a director and an actress, and you do so many things. You wear so many hats, like so many of my creative friends and like all of us on this podcast. So before we dive in, why don't you just say hi to the good people out there and let them know a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. As Tami said, I'm Serena Norr. I kind of consider myself a multifaceted creative, which can include many things, as Tami mentioned. Um, it's a variety of things from being a playwright, writing my own work, self-producing, directing, sometimes performing, just kind of anything that really, back to the word spark, but kind of sparks my soul in terms of this
Mhm.
creative expression that I believe we all have in us, right? It's kind of all bubbling and these stories and really about connecting to our imagination and using our imagination. And so for me, sometimes that is, yes, writing a play or writing something fictional. And then recently with Spark, it was more writing something that was more personal to me. And kind of looking at your life, right? And really seeing kind of the layers of who we are. Sometimes you can't necessarily do that through fiction. So I love this opportunity where it was actually presenting a part of myself or a version of myself, and connecting with the other women as well as we were all telling our stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
amazing. Go, Becky, go. I know.
And
You're
I'm like
chomping at the bit.
bang, right on it. I'm so curious because you are so I like how you said multifaceted. You're a multifaceted creative.
I just made
And
that up.
so I'm kind of curious. Well, I thought it was perfect, so I would hold on to that. I might borrow it. So
Totally.
because it really hit me in a way that made me wonder. This is kind of a two-parter question. So
Okay.
I guess my first question that I thought of off of that was, have you always had that connection to that spark, like you said, whatever sparks your soul? Like, have you always had that connection? Has it always been super clear for you? Um, I guess I'll just stop there and ask that, not lead the witness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was always in there, but there's also the outside world, right? Where sometimes it's just hard to speak true and be true to yourself. So while I did want to pursue my career, kind of started in acting and then learning about the behind the scenes world, that's when I got into playwriting and writing. But practically, when I graduated school, it was about, okay, finding a job, right? And sometimes doing these creative things are just so hard because they don't initially pay, or they don't pay for a while, and it's just hard to sustain. So I think it's also like the outside world influences, where of course I would want to just write full time, but I also had to work. So and then work and kids and life happens, where a lot of this, I think, creative soul and, sometimes who we are, it just kind of gets pushed down because life just feels overwhelming. So I think it was there, but kind of with bringing the spark back, it was just very dim and quieted. And, it's like that kind of inner voice that you often hear, like, all right, just do
Oh, yes.
it, or write for 5 minutes or whatever. And finally, I think after, over the years, you finally find your inner strength to actually listen to it, where the 5 minutes becomes the 10 minutes, or, just connecting with the right people who believe in you and believe in your vision, or doing a project like this, right? And then you find a way to like make the other stuff a little bit less, as like your creative life becomes more prominent. So yeah, I think it's always there, but it's just, how do you be true to it and be true to yourself with all of the other things going on in life?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
that
that's
seems to be a
huge.
theme. That seems to
Mm-hmm.
be a theme with our guests, about kind of coming back and touching back to their
Mm,
innately creative being, and what they're doing in the world now is not what they were doing maybe even 10 years ago, or however long. It just takes time to kind of let that unfold. And I love how you were just kind of describing, I would write for 5 minutes and then I would write for 10 minutes. And it's a slow unfolding, and you have to
mm-hmm,
really find joy in the journey. I've kind of been stuck on that phrase a little bit this season, but there is something to it, because you can have a spark moment where you hear that inner voice that says, I just need to write.
Mm.
And I think we have to give ourselves a lot of permission to be so patient, and to
mm,
really allow it to germinate and really grow slowly, because it takes time. So especially when you have external outward world things coming at you, but that doesn't make the spark any less significant or important. And it can definitely still get you to where you are now, writing and doing all of these multi hyphenate, creative things. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think too, I love what you said about, that 5 minute, 10 minute thing, because sometimes we create these goals or we have these dreams and it's amazing. Like, yes, dream big, right?
Mm-hmm,
But sometimes
mhm.
that big vision can be so overwhelming that people get stuck in starting. They just don't start, right?
Yeah.
And I love what you said. It's so inspirational, for anybody that might be out there going like, yeah, I'd like to write a book, or I'd like to start painting, or whatever that thing is that, is calling to you. Write a play, write a screenplay.
mm-hmm.
Um, start a blog, whatever, right? Um, by saying like, all right, I only need to like dedicate 5 minutes of my day. Who doesn't have 5 minutes? Like, stop
Yeah.
scrolling
Right.
Instagram for 5 minutes,
Right.
right? I
No,
mean,
absolutely.
and just start to jot things down or record things on your phone, or, it just like make it tangible for ourselves, right?
Mhm.
I remember even with Spark, I, started one way, and,
Mm,
it was, and it started zigzagging in all kinds of different directions. And it's also like, yeah, you got to trust that process too, right? Like, don't
Yeah.
necessarily have the outcome in mind all the time. Like, sometimes it might actually turn out better than you even anticipated.
mm-hmm,
Has that
definitely. I
ever
mean,
happened for
Yeah.
you?
yeah, and I think it's interesting because sometimes within all of these like constrictions from the outside world, sometimes we get in our own way. So it's almost like, okay, if I can't finish this novel by this year, I'm not going to do it. Or it's just, it feels like so overwhelming and so overbearing.
Hmm.
So I think that's also
Hmm.
part of it, of like giving ourselves some grace and just some time, and realizing we don't have to operate in this kind of structured kind of machine that we've been taught, that it's okay if it's a little bit slower. And yes, and often I will start a piece and kind of like it goes a different direction, or sometimes, a lot of times when I write a play, it's like I have the core idea of like who the people are and the situation, but not until I'm actually writing the dialogue do I realize like where it's kind of going.
Hmm.
And the same thing with the
Mm.
monologues, where it starts one way, you have the foundation, but when you're actually writing and spending time with the piece, it kind of takes a whole other life, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
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 So going back to that and your process, I remember talking to you about this monologue, and it's so powerful. Your performance and the piece. And
Thank you.
actually, before we go there, we had Monique on the show. And it was just amazing for Becky and I to hear this, because the way the show is set up, for those of you listening out there, all of us are on the stage together, and each storyteller goes up center stage under the spotlight to tell a very raw, very real story that they've never spoken out loud in front of people, excuse me, people before. And so we had, like 4 ladies on one side of the stage and 4 ladies on the other side of the stage, and Monique was sitting across from you. And she talked about how struck she was by your presence, how the light was hitting your face.
Oh my gosh.
your monologue, your performance, your bravery, right? And so what I love about that, and obviously, Monique is a very talented artist, and she's working on this portrait series. And so what came out of that was she reached out to you and she wanted to paint your portrait, right?
Yeah, that was wild.
What was that like?
I was totally shocked when she reached out. That was literally probably like a week before Spark. So we were trying to figure out, and it's, obviously once we got into Tech Week, it got really busy. But yeah, so we did it like right after. And, she's basically
because of the
like,
rehearsal process,
yeah, so that's a whole other thing. Yeah, you rehearse. So that was really wild. And I was so completely touched and shocked that she had reached out and asked me to do that. But I basically went to her house. We took a bunch of pictures. And then from there, she selected one of them and she did this amazing painting. And I can't even believe how
so just like we were talking about, right? Just like we were talking about. It's like, you create and write this monologue about a very personal story about your childhood, about growing up, about really leaning into being a creative, right? Which was a very painful journey.
Yeah.
And someone is so inspired by you that it becomes art for her.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Right? I mean, you could not have sat there and said, I want my monologue to be so amazing and inspirational that it's going to inspire other artists. And I want someone to paint my portrait, right?
Right. I just didn't, I just wanted to get through it.
Point.
Yeah. You were like, I did this thing. I'm committed to this thing. I want to be done. I want it to be
exactly.
over.
Okay, I did it.
You just said I just didn't. You said I just didn't want to throw up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there thinking that, right? And Monique's looking at you and having a different experience, right? And seeing something externally that you're not reflecting from what's going on the inside. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But it is a good example, Tami, about you have no idea when you trust fall into these things, but when you really do, the most amazing things come out of it. It's funny to me that our conversation has taken this turn because right before we logged on, I'm like, of course, taking my few minutes to scroll on Instagram.
Totally.
And I don't know, right? And so I don't know if anybody follows this guy, keeps popping up in my feed, this Bashar.
Oh, I love him.
I don't know how to say
Bashar.
I do too. Bashar,
Yeah, cool.
He's like a channel. And so I forget what the topic was that he was talking to the person about, but he said, insistence is the same as resistance. And I was like, whoa. And it hit me so strong for this exact reason, right? If you insist on what the outcome has to be, you are actually resisting everything that's that could possibly come to you and be an amazing experience, like having your portrait painted that you never could have dreamed, that never could have, So it's funny.
I love that.
Woo woo, how that literally was the last thing. I like literally closed the app down.
Pretty amazing.
As soon as I saw that, because I was like, ooh, that's a good note to go into this interview.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Okay. So now that we know, the amazing, beautiful thing that transpired from you performing that piece, let's talk about the process, right?
Okay.
I mean, this is something deeply personal. Yourself had said to me, you write in the third person,
right?
Never about you, even though your pieces are infused with parts of you, right? But they're not about you. You create these characters.
Right.
So so what was that like? And then, what made it to the page? What were you like, I could never say this, but I'm going to keep it in anyway. And then you did. Anything like that you want to share?
Yeah. So, I mean, the process, I think the way we did it was incredibly warm and welcoming, where we all came together and we all started just kind of like workshopping our stories.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out which level, obviously we have so many things within us. And I was just trying to figure out which level that I would feel comfortable, but yet that would challenge me and really force me to be brave. Around during COVID, I started writing personal monologues just as a way to kind of sort out the past and just sort out kind of things that happen, what I understand, what I don't understand. Um, so I felt like I was slowly building the blocks of like doing something like this, not exactly knowing that I was going to talk about this topic, but kind of just the process of revealing that's beyond like a journal and creating like a structured form. So
Mm.
I think when we all came together and I was kind of trying to think of the topic, I was like, okay, there's this lingering parental abandonment thing that I talk about a lot. There's growing up in Brooklyn, there's creativity, there's having eating issues over the years. And I was like, oh, once I started like playing with it, I was like, they're kind of all connected. And I used to look at them very separately, right? Because like, oh, that thing happened, that thing happened. And then
That's right.
through the
Mm.
writing and through working with everybody and hearing it out loud, it's like, oh, well, that happened because of that. And it's all part of kind of your journey and your story, whether you you like it or not, but just seeing how it's all connected was pretty wild. And I don't think I necessarily would have done that without Spark and without this monologue. So the idea is that I was trying to excavate this part of myself in the past, looking at myself, who I was then, while also seeing who I am now. So I think I was able to, and I think a lot of the women here was that is also not necessarily in me anymore. Obviously, it was part of something that happened, but I don't feel
Right.
as connected to that. So while it was scary, it was almost like, oh, that was like another version of myself all of those years ago, but still connected enough that I could write about it, if that makes sense.
That
So I think
totally
if
makes sense.
something
Mhm.
happened maybe a year ago or whatever, it might be a little bit harder to excavate because you're still kind of living with it.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
just having the time kind of helped me with the bravery too, right? It's like, okay, that happened, but it's not exactly me anymore.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a great exercise in really reflecting and observing your own growth and your own path to healing, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, through this, I think this whole process and personal monologues and Spark and what we're doing here, it's really a way for us all to heal and connect. And, hearing everyone's stories, even though we're not exactly related, they're all
Mhm.
connected. We all have moments
Yeah.
of like, oh, yeah, I went through that or I felt like that. And we're just taught not to talk about these things. And I think we've just repressed them and pushed them down, or, we hide them or we talk to maybe one or two friends. But, it was incredible after the experience where it's like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, or I related to that.
Mm.
And that kind of coming together, I mean, it's so healing for us personally, but also for the collective. So I
Totally.
just found it so incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to approach a question that we ask all of everyone who comes on the show, but I want to approach it a little bit differently with you just because of what you just said about how healing the process has been. So we normally ask everybody to give us a snapshot of 5-year-old you,
Hmm.
but I'm curious if you want to approach it a little bit differently. You can give us a snapshot of 5-year-old you too, but I'm also curious, what does 5-year-old you think about Serena who got on stage and did
Mm.
that monologue?
Mm,
Serena who worked through
great
that monologue
question.
and connected the dots and got on that stage and did it. So whichever way you want to approach that, I'm just curious.
Oh, I love that question.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny. I think connecting to the old or connecting to your old self and versions of yourself, I often think about that person. I often think about that like kind of childhood that was living in chaos and a little bit lost. And a lot of what I do, I think intrinsically is for her, right? It is for that story and that voice, that person who didn't have a voice. I think she would be incredibly proud and shocked and like, whoa, you've come a long way. But like, look at the power of all of the things that you've ever wanted to do. All I've ever wanted to do
Mm.
is write, all I've ever wanted to do is create. And it seemed so impossible at that time because it was just like, how can you leave this place and succeed and do this all by yourself? And so yeah, I think she would just be like, keep going, you're
Mhm.
doing it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. I mean, I am just so inspired by you because, I think basically I don't know at this point how you are producing the amount of work that is coming out of you. Like
This is true.
it's just amazing. Like every time I turn around, there's like a new piece
What
that
is
you've
this?
written there, you know, you're directing, there's another show that's happening. You know, and I've had the good fortune of being cast by you. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I'm really looking forward to so why don't you tell the good people what project you have coming up? Obviously, you're going to be in Spark again,
Spark.
which we're so excited about.
Yes.
The first weekend of November.
Hmm.
So if folks are, you know, hearing this and saying like, wow, this sounds really inspiring, I would love to hear Serena's story.
Yeah.
I definitely invite and encourage everyone in our local area to check that out. But what do you have coming up beyond Spark?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So I think just to touch on a little about doing a lot, I think it's about finding your thing, right? You find your spark, you find your
Mm,
passion, and it's just like you kind of fight to like keep making it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Love
sometimes
that.
there's all of these like micro opportunities. So I have a 10-minute play with Westchester Collaborative Theater. It's a Halloween play, but also a comedy and like a subversive look at dating through this with this couple. That's at the end of October. Then we have Spark, which I'm so excited about. And then in November, there's a festival in Pelham called Soup to Nuts, and that plays called The Debt Collector. I'm not directing, but I'm involved. So sometimes
Mhm.
it's like you give and take, right? I was like, I
Yeah.
can direct them all, or just like, you know what? There's amazing people that I know, like, let me just pass this along. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's also knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the
mm.
play that you're going to be involved in January and February is called Agency for the Lost, and that's my first full-length production in New York City at the Tank, which I'm very excited about.
That is just amazing. So,
Thank you.
yeah, Becky, you should totally come to this if
Yes,
you're going to be in
please.
New York during that time frame. I mean, I know
I
you're
don't
moving,
think
but
I'm going to be. Where?
oh,
Like
yeah, but
I put a moratorium on myself when I get to Indiana. I'm like, I need 2 months of
Oh, I know.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
no
makes
movement.
sense.
I need to be
Yeah.
stay put.
Yes.
But
We'll take a lot of
I'm going to
pictures.
steal another word. Thank you. I'm going to steal another word that you just said. And of course, I shouldn't be surprised that I'm getting all these great phrases from someone who writes and who uses words to
Yeah.
weave,
Yeah. Very
stories.
good with
But
words.
micro opportunities.
Mm,
I heard you say that. Micro
Yeah.
opportunities. That I think is so important for people to hear and to lean into, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
always have to be the big flashy thing. It might
Exactly.
just be something really small, and
Hmm.
look for the little micro opportunities that let you have a taste or a feeling about what that could be like, or to get into. So
or just keep
I
feeding
love
you in
that.
some way, right?
Yeah. And then you meet
Yeah,
people and you connect and you kind of continue to
right.
grow, but it's not always going to be this like, for me, like a full length play. Sometimes it's going to be these 10 minutes or a monologue or a teaching opportunity. I think that what I'm hoping to hone in on within my teaching and plays is just for people to be open and start saying yes to yourself, right? There's
Mm,
all of
Mm,
these things, which I said earlier, that we get in our own way. And sometimes it's just about opening yourself up and connecting with people and trying things that are a little bit scary, because
yeah.
yeah.
honestly, it's only going to help you. It's only going to help you be a stronger person and more confident. But it takes time, right? So it's part of the micro steps to writing, but also the micro steps to being true to yourself.
Totally.
Yes.
And, you know, I keep thinking about Anne Lamott in this conversation,
Mm,
right? Um, and shitty first drafts, right?
right.
You have to be really comfortable with
Totally.
that shitty thing that's going to happen the first time, whether it's a song or whether
Hmm.
it's a chapter of a book, or whether it's, a start of a play, dialogue, whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? Um, and you have to just be comfortable with the fact that you're not like a New York Times bestseller isn't just going to pour out of you,
Right.
right? Those things take
Hmm.
time,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes
And so
time.
that goes back to these micro steps, these micro opportunities. I mean, I love that. You're right, Becky. That's
Mhm.
like a really good concept to hang
Good
on to.
concept.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Super
But
inspiring.
back to the bigger, it really is. But going back to, speaking of like micro things, right?
Hmm.
If you're thinking, this is the question I've been asking everybody, and I love hearing everybody's different answers to this about Spark. and the arc of the experience, right? So we're talking from the minute that you and Tami first started
Mm-hmm.
talking about the idea of doing something like this, all the way through doing the monologue and then post monologue, right? Which I'm curious to hear how your life has been post doing Spark as well. Um, but what would you say was your most powerful or most memorable or favorite Spark moment in that arc of experience?
From my own monologue or just the overall
It
experience?
doesn't, from the overall experience, from soup
Okay.
to nuts, from the time you first started talking about it with Tami until this moment that we're talking about it now. Like, what has been something that hit you particularly hard or was your favorite Spark thing?
Yeah, oh, I love that. I think two things really stand out to me is creation and community. So the first part is actually creating something, literally something from nothing. I mean, that's kind of what the show is as well. Like this is this bare bones idea, and how incredible it is that we all were able to come together and share our truth and share our stories. So I think it's the creation of the actual show and the creation of the monologues, right? And to see and to learn about all of these amazing women and how brave and beautiful we all are. And then yes, in the community and just connecting with everybody, right? We all kind of took off some of our layers, even though we don't know each other on a deep level. It's almost like a nice
Mhm.
start, and we, now we like support each other and we try to like see each other regularly, and obviously doing the show again. So I think it's just incredible when people and specifically women come together and support each other, because we're only there to lift each other, and that's what I really felt during Spark.
Mm,
That's
yeah,
beautiful. I
yeah.
love that.
Thank you.
How has your own life changed since Spark? Have you noticed any changes for you?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think after the show, it was almost like, oh, okay, what just happened? Like it was like,
Yeah, there was a
because
lot of that for
there was a
sure.
lot of, right? And it was just like, because we were go, 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 and we had high
Uh-huh.
adrenaline, and it was so exciting and sold out and all the good things. And then I think going back to, because it was summer, but going back to real life, it was just like that first week after was kind of like reflection for me, and like, okay, what just happened? What did you learn? And, what did you get out of it? And for me, it was really about the freedom, the freedom to let these things out, and to not feel so stuck and purged. And I think I felt a little bit lighter. I think we've heard a lot about like the body also manifests a lot of the things that we're carrying. And so it just felt a little sense of lightness. I slept
Mm,
better.
Mm,
mhm.
And there's just an overall freedom to letting these things out. So I think
Yeah.
just in general, like, okay, and then you feel braver to maybe tell another story, or another iteration, or to talk about it, and obviously have more people come. So it's only positive when we share our truth.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's so great to say too, because, think about anybody listening out there probably has something in their lives that has happened, or
Mm,
maybe you're feeling a certain way about a particular thing or experience. And you think, I am the only one
right.
who this has
mhm,
happened to. I am the
Hmm.
only one that feels this way, or I feel so stupid. How could I let this happen to
Oh,
myself? Or
totally.
any number of things, right? And then you think, how could I possibly let anybody know this about me, right? And
Hmm.
then there are all these other feelings of whether it's fear or shame or, just anything about the particular feeling or experience that you're having. And then this is what's on the other side, right?
Hmm.
When you just face that thing, you say the things, right? And you realize, oh, like I'm still here.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah.
And look at this. I have this amazing group of people who are supporting me, right? And the people that experienced it in the audiences for those 4 shows that weekend, I mean, they were touched, they were moved. No
Mm,
one was like, "Serena, how dare you? You're an awful person. Like, who do
right.
you think you are?" Or whatever you had imagined would happen if
Totally. Yeah.
you put your real self out there,
Hmm.
right? And I just think it's so important, as you said, to share our truth and to share our stories because, people are sitting home scrolling, looking at everybody's highlight reels,
Yeah.
thinking,
Hmm.
everybody's life is so much better than mine, right? Or you have people that are just out there doing these things on social media and they have no idea why, but they just want clicks and likes and whatever, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And then, coming through in these stories with these real experiences and real moments and sharing what that felt like and how you've changed and how you've grown. I think it's just so powerful and so important to be able to do that. And as you said, it's not easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here you are. You've survived. You look great.
Survived. Thank you. I often tell myself that, right? This is not going to kill me. It's just going to be a little uncomfortable, but sometimes it's okay to be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like we're often taught to pacify and push things down and make everyone comfortable while we're like dying on the inside. But maybe being uncomfortable is like going to just help us, be more
Mhm.
truthful and be more real for ourselves. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
You
it's
know,
okay.
but I do want to say though, sometimes I criticize the scroll and the Instagram,
Right.
right? And but there's so much that could come out of it. Becky
Mm-hmm.
mentioned this thing with Bashar that she stumbled upon. And, in this conversation, I'm also reminded of something that I saw yesterday on Instagram. And it was this video of this guy talking about how he did not know. He went out to dinner with a friend of his, and he did not know, as she was talking, that she had been in such a bad place.
Mm.
And this bad place was maybe like 3 months ago from when they had gotten together, right? And she goes on to talk about, just how she was struggling and how she didn't know basically if she wanted to live. And
Oh
he's like,
gosh.
he's like, on the one hand, I was relieved that, my friend was okay and we're sitting there having dinner. And then I got really angry because I was like, why didn't you reach out to me? Why didn't you
Yeah.
know that I would be there for you? Right. And then she was like, well, I did. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And so she like begins to show him some text messages, right? Like, hey, what's up? You want to hang out? Or you have a few minutes? But they all sounded like normal things that they have
Mm.
always spoken about, right? That he
Mm-hmm.
didn't pick up on the cues, right? And he said, the beautiful thing that came out of that conversation was that they developed a code, right? So if she ever
Mm.
texted him, hey, do you have 8 minutes? Then he knows she's in a crisis. She needs me,
Yeah.
and I need to
Mm.
be there for her, right? And it just goes back
Yeah.
to what we were talking about. Like, as you said, like, we hum along in life. We're supposed to be there, taking care of the kids and running the house or, trying to find time for ourselves, running around, got to get the groceries in the fridge, got to get
Mm-hmm.
dinner on the table, just whatever, right?
Everything.
Whatever,
Yeah.
whatever, whatever, right? And for people that don't have kids or, we all still have responsibilities. We all
Mm-hmm.
still are humans living life, right? And then we're posting things on social media and our life looks great, right? But at the same time, it's these stories, it's these moments where we pause and we have real conversations about things and what's happening in our lives. That's what we humans are really here for. It's that connection, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think
And this
doing
Yeah.
just, yeah,
something,
it just brings it front and center when we're on stage doing that.
yeah, I was just going to say, I think Spark and, the connection, the audiences were so lovely and beautiful and also connecting to their Spark moment, right? Or crying or having a full experience because they were also resonating with things that we were saying too. So hopefully
Yeah.
it sparks other people to tell their stories, right? And it just keeps trickling down.
Totally, totally. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
even, through Instagram after that, the number of people that were in the audience that reached out
Mm.
to me and they were like, I lost my boyfriend or my husband
Wow.
or, I've been struggling, I want to paint and,
Mm.
whatever it is, right? And they're like, the fact that you all were up there telling us these stories and taking us through these experiences, she's like, it's so, insert different people, whatever it was, it was like, I can do it. Like I can
Yeah.
actually do it.
Yeah.
So, I
Love
mean,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. I think people who, especially that with that first run, it was so unknown, right?
Mm.
It was so unknown about what the experience was going to be for the people who were watching it. I mean,
Hmm.
I think we all knew intrinsically that sharing stories, and we know how healing that is and how healing
Hmm.
it is to not only share it, but also to witness it. As a witness, something happens for you too. So it's like we knew that, but you just don't know, like, you don't know exactly how that's going to hit with people. And each show was different, right? So each show
Yeah.
hit differently because the energy in the room was different. But the thing that was consistent for all four shows that we did back in July, the people's faces when they walked in, because I think a lot of times people weren't exactly sure, like, what
Yeah.
exactly is this? Because it is so
Yeah.
unique, right? It's like music,
Uh-huh.
movement, monologues, like what are we doing?
Yeah.
They walked in kind of looking one way, and I'm telling you, they walked out looking a completely
Mm.
different way. I mean, I had friends that came up to me at the end and their faces were like stunned. I mean, they were
Wow.
just stunned. It's like they almost didn't have words. They were like, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. Like and
Mm.
they meant that in the best way. Like
Yeah.
it touched them in some kind of way that they did not expect. And that's what I thought was like a really interesting thing about the experience is it's not just the telling of the story, it's the
Mm.
witnessing of the story, and what that does for you to witness
Yes.
someone else's
Yeah.
story
I
is
love that.
exceedingly powerful. It really, really is, because it does unlock something inside of you, and it almost like it puts air on your own spark, right? It starts to flame it up a
Mhm.
little bit, and you're like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, I have a story. My story is valuable too. I mean, there's something about it. So
That's
I
right.
it's so powerful. The witnessing part, I don't want to glide over.
Yeah, and also that we can rewrite our own stories, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I recently learned about Ina Garten. You guys know who she is, right?
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
The cookbook
It's
queen,
next on my
recipe
to read
queen.
book.
Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, right? But she had
Her
a very
memoir.
difficult, yes, and she had a very difficult childhood, there was
Mm.
abuse, there was, dad slapping the kids and, to the point where, I saw a soundbite where, she was told no one would ever love her, right?
Mm.
And imagine hearing that as a young person, nobody's ever going to love you, right? And
Mhm.
the effect but the thing that came out of it is, you can rewrite your own story. Like there
Yeah.
are people that
Yeah.
have had as difficult childhoods as I've had. They've had even more difficult. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what that scale or that spectrum is. Like we all have the opportunity to rewrite our story. And I think with
Yeah.
Spark, that's definitely one of the themes that I hope resonates for people is that we're all up there saying, this happened to me, or this has been my life, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
my life anymore. It's what I want my life to be, right? And we all have the power to do that, but we don't necessarily think that in the moment. We think we've been dealt these
Mhm.
cards. We think
Mm-hmm.
we have this life and this experience, and and the ego, right, just keeps us in this loop
Keeps
Definitely.
us
to keep
stuck.
us safe,
Mm-hmm.
stuck in comfort zone, right? Because then there's that beautiful unknown, which is also the spiral where all these other things can happen, right? But you've got to be able, from a higher consciousness standpoint, right? Really get deep with your own self and take those leaps
Mhm.
of faith. Um, and so these
Yeah.
are sketches within Spark of really brave women who have taken some big fucking leaps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And landed on their feet. I mean, that's
That's
the
right.
other, like
Better,
solidly on their
stronger.
own 2 feet. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that. I posted something on Instagram yesterday. I know you saw it, Tammy, because you shared it on your story about this. It's a poem. Some people call it a poem, some people call it a prayer by this mystic Howard Thurman.
Mm-hmm.
And I read it 2 years ago, and it hit me so strongly about, I will sing a new song. Of course, that resonates with me,
Of
the
course.
songwriter, but he's
The
using
musician
song
you
as a
are.
metaphor.
Mm.
Yeah, as a metaphor. And one of the things he says in it that hits me every time, and I just love it, is that I'm trying to place the demands of where my soul wants to go. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to make that old song fit those demands of the new reality of what I'm trying to bring into my life. And it
Oh,
and it,
interesting.
it won't, because that song was what it was supposed to be for that experience in that point in time. And now you have to write new words, and you have to come into new experiences that you've never experienced before. And
Yeah.
you have to find new harmonies and new melodies. And it's scary to do that. And at the same time, you get to write a new song, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you get to write that new song and honor the old song for what it was in that time and what it did for you to bring you to this new place. So that is a beautiful, beautiful weaving through Spark and everybody's monologues.
Totally.
Love that
I
you
love
brought that up,
that.
Tammy.
So you ready to do it again, Serena?
I'm ready.
Okie
I
doke.
think it was one
We're
of those like,
fired up.
okay, now we had a couple weeks and now we're going to jump back in.
Mhm.
It's funny, like the hardest thing, I think as a performer, non-performer is sometimes even the memorization. So just like going back into that and going back into that process. But, we did it and I'm just so excited to now do it in a new space with a new experience and
Yeah.
get a whole new group of audience members to see it, or maybe some similar people too to come
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
actually do have some repeaters. I was looking at the sales the other day
Amazing.
and I was like, wow, that's
Cool.
cool. People want to come back again.
I
That's
love
so
that.
awesome.
That is
Yeah.
great.
Well,
So
Yeah.
thank you
And we
so
do, you do
much.
have a few
Yeah.
elements that are going to be new, right? There are going to be a
that's
few
true.
elements that
Oh,
are
in the show.
that are
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if
for
you have
sure.
seen it before, you can come back and see
That's
it again.
right.
We're going to have some new stuff. And I think everybody's monologues will hit you a different way because we're different people than we were back in July.
That's
So
true.
That
Yeah.
is so true. And we do have a new member in the cast that I'm really excited about. A woman by the name of Jean Gutierrez, who goes by
Mhm.
the Woke Widow on Instagram, if anybody wants to kind of check her out beforehand. But really incredible story to
mhm.
share that she has not spoken out loud before.
Mm.
And yeah, if anybody has ever experienced loss in their life, she's had back-to-back multiple losses, and she's so inspirational. So
Yeah.
we just want to say thank you so much, Serena, for being on the show
Yes.
today, woo-woo, in the real world and chatting up all things Spark with us. But
Yes.
also just bringing us more into, your process and who you are, and your work, which has been amazing. And so, yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy and Becky, for
Thanks,
having me.
Serena.
I'm so excited to do the show again. A couple weeks.
Amazing.
Yeah.
See you on the other side.
Oh.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.